Converted man here?
It's the converted man.
Converted man here. The end of atheism. You must have questions like, who am I? And why am I presuming to end the end of atheism? And is that a threat? Of course it's not a threat. So, let me explain. For far too long, the religious have had a one-sided conversation with themselves, in which they present their religion as being absolutely true and unquestionable, and some religions have even killed those who dare to question it.
For far too long, believers in God have watched on passively, while a new atheist movement has overtaken our cultural landscape.
Please ignore all the counterexamples of all the apologetics ever that have been out there debating atheists, promoting various religions, selling books and other things to proselytize. Ignore all those people that knock on your door and try to tell you about their religion. Please ignore all of those counterexamples because they would really hurt our persecution narrative here. We've been silent and quiet as the atheists have just run rampant, and we haven't said a word in our defense. So just woe is me. We're just so quiet and peaceful. We just haven't said anything at all, and they just got all this time and got all sorts of popular stuff, and we haven't said anything. That's so horrible.
Suddenly, you're kinda weird if you believe in God. I mean, a lot of people believe in God like they believe in the North Pole. It's there, but who really cares? But if you
believe in the North Pole, because it's not like a thing that you can verify empirically or with tests or science or logic or anything. It's just there, so what if it's there? It's just believe in it like we believe in the moon or we believe in the sun, stuff that we don't need to believe in, right? So, yeah, it's just like that. But since you mentioned the North Pole, well, now, obviously, I gotta bring up Santa Claus. I mean, you walked right into that one. It's just like believing in Santa Claus. You can't disprove that Santa isn't really real. Oh, those silly non-believing Santaists. And they keep attacking our belief in Santa. It's like the North Pole. Just believe that Santa exists. Yeah, but so what? Nobody really cares.
really believe in God, if you really try and live your life according to religious teachings, then you're classed as a bit backward, a bit uneducated, or at the very least, unwilling to give up cultural ideas in favor of enlightened modern explanations.
If somebody thinks that you're uneducated, then maybe it's time you got an education. Or perhaps you could prove them wrong by demonstrating that you do have an education. If they think that you're backwards, then perhaps you can ask them in what way you're backwards, and if they're able to demonstrate that you are indeed backwards, perhaps it is you that's in the wrong. And as far as accepting ideas, whether they're modern or not, you should only accept that which can be verified empirically with tests or with a logically coherent argument of some sort, so that you can start your investigation into that matter, which would include all the sciences that we have today. But, that causes problems, so we have to question those things in that thought bubble, one of them being evolution. Of course we have to question that. It's not like we have mounds of evidence for it or something. So let's continue to be uneducated, backwards, and continue to question stuff, because obviously we're right, and we're going to keep insisting that we're right and living in this little bubble because we don't want it popped. And that's what you're doing, and that's persecution, and oh, woe is us, you keep making us feel bad. Well, maybe because you're wrong. How about that idea?
This sentiment has gone to a whole new level in the last decade. In 2004, Sam Harris published his book, End of Faith, marking the beginning of a new era of aggressive, anti-religious rhetoric. We now live in a world where atheism is the cool guy in the gym class, and theism that awkward scrawny kid that no one really likes listening to. It's about time that changed.
What is the thing that we have that we say when somebody says something that's completely and utterly opposed to all of reality? Huh? Hold on. I gotta get this phone call. Must be important to interrupt my video. Also, if you're on headphones, now is a good time to turn them down slightly. Hello? How's it going? Outright Light here! Yay! I'm in a video again! Outright Light! Look at my new phone! I'm so awesome! Outright Light! Hello? Think of Rudy Man, you're there? Yeah, I'm here. Oh! You're not gonna hang up on me? No, of course not.
We are a group of Muslim youth from the Ahmadiyya community. However, we're doing this for all believers in God, regardless of their religions.
Vocal atheists have been around much longer than Sam Harris's book, or even perhaps Sam Harris himself. This movement that you're talking about has been around for a while. So that's a fractal error. And the other fractal error I'm going to go ahead and submit is the idea that you're doing this for all believers in God. No, you're not. If that was true, you wouldn't mention being Muslim. Muslim would have absolutely nothing to do with it. And later on, you have a video that is a Muslim speaker supposedly proving God. Then you have a video that talks about how Muslim isn't a religion of terror, or that it is a religion of peace, or something like that. I'll get to that video later on. So, absolutely not. You are concerned with your religion, and the other religious beliefs are kind of on your side, so you want to include them. But if it was really true that it was about every believer in God, then you wouldn't bother to mention what your religion is, nor would you bother defending that particular religion.
Our aim is to show how in this age of scientific progress and rational inquiry, the case for God's existence has only become stronger than ever.
If anything, science has increasingly marginalized the role that God can play, but you deliberately obfuscate science in order to continue to fit your particular God claim inside of it. But as many of those of faith have pointed out to those pesky skeptics and atheists over and over again, science can't say anything about God because God is not a natural phenomenon, apparently. Which means that there would be no science that could ever lead to and or point at a God unless the God is natural or a part of nature. So you're going to have to give up one or the other. Either give up the idea that God is supernatural and then science could prove it, or you're going to have to give up the idea that science can point to God, which it couldn't do unless God interacts with the natural world, which would then make some component of God in the natural realm, which would mean that we could study God, but then that would mean part of God is natural, and I don't know what that would mean, but you're not willing to do either of these things, so you can't have it both ways.
But we also want to do more than that. We want to bring people to personal certainty and experience of God.
I don't want people to come to a certainty, because that has problems in it. If you're sure that you're right, and you're certain that you're right, then you can't be wrong, which means you can't learn. You can't learn something that would oppose that certainty. I must be right about X, Y, and Z. I am sure that I'm right about X, Y, and Z. I am certain that X, Y, and Z is true. Well, it's not. Well, nope, that has to be wrong. That thing that came along to say that it was wrong has to be wrong. I can't know that I'm wrong. Certainty in that sense is a bad thing. As far as the experience of the divine or spiritual or God or whatever you want to call this, yeah, fine. If you want to try to experience something like that, I have no problem with that. I understand that. I've experienced it myself at one point. I can now experience something like it or even better than it if I can quantify such a feeling, which I don't know that I can, through other methods. And I don't have a problem with trying to experience different feelings and emotions and just experiences in and of themselves. What I have a problem with is trying to label those experiences as something that we have not yet proven to be a thing. I've had an experience that might have been a very profound, moving experience, to be sure, but that's all it was. I can't label it as more. Calling it spiritual in many ways to me would dampen the experience. Yes, it was a wonderful, awe-inspiring experience. Maybe I just don't have a word to describe it. But I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to label it as something. Doing so demeans the experience. It waters it down in some way, shape, or form. But that's all subjective. You can call it whatever you want. I don't care. It's when you demand that it is something that I have to speak out against it. I believe that this is a spiritual experience. I'm not going to argue with you. There is a spiritual experience. Now I have to argue with you. And unless and until we have empirical evidence, repeatable tests, and or logically coherent argument, we must continue to be skeptical of the conclusions. Pickles, 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 pickles.